Have you ever traveled down a road and wondered who it was named for? We asked ourselves that question about Old Keene Mill Road in Springfield, Virginia. Was Old Keene Mill Road named after a mill? If so, where was it, and who owned it? It turns out there was in fact a mill, and it had a pretty interesting story to go with it. The story led me down a rabbit hole of Northern Virginia history, culminating in a search for 19th-century ruins and long-forgotten gravestones. Keene's Mill was a saw and grist mill that stood at the intersection of Pohick Creek and Old Keene Mill Road. The historical marker at the intersection of Huntsman Boulevard and Old Keene Mill Road says this mill was built by James Keane between 1796 and 1800. But that's not the part that caught my attention. What caught my attention was the final line in the marker. 2 mill races are all that remain on the site. From that point on, I had 2 goals: learn more about the mill and find the old mill races. First, the history. As I searched for information about the mill, I learned something quite shocking. William H. Keane, James Keane's grandnephew, and owner of the mill from 1849 to 1855, was in jail for murder. Further research revealed that Keane had stabbed a man named Lewis Q. Hall over an altercation of some sort, and Hall died 2 days after the incident. Alexandria Gazette articles from 1856 reported that Keane escaped from jail, but he was caught a day later. In November 1856, a jury found Keane guilty of murder and he was sentenced to hang in January of 1857. After some letters and 2 delays of the sentence, the governor of Virginia at the time, Henry Wise, commuted Keane's punishment to 10 years in prison. In 1857, Keane went to the Virginia State Prison in Richmond. He was 47 at the time. Keane's fate after that is unknown. Any prison records that may have existed were destroyed in the Civil War. The property was sold in 1857, and records indicated that by 1869 the mill was no longer standing. Since then, the land changed ownership several times. Portions of it were abandoned and others developed. Currently, the land that contains the mill races is part of the Fairfax County Park Authority. When I began my research, I had no idea what a mill race was. However, I was intrigued that such an odd part of history still had some visible traces, and I wanted to find them. I discovered that mill races were man-made channels that essentially run water to and from mill wheels, so we'd be looking for ruts in the land. We ventured into the woods one hot summer day just after we'd had tropical storm level wind and rain, so the ground was soft, wet, and extremely muddy. Our feet squished in the earth and thorns ripped at our jeans. I walked into several spider webs, which reminded me I definitely was not an outdoors woman. We recalled a map we'd found online and tried to remember what direction we should be heading in. We eventually came upon Pohick Creek. It was a pretty quiet space. Eventually, we came upon a small rut in the earth that fed into the creek. If our map calculations were correct, this was one of the mill races. We decided to walk further down along the creek and see if we could find the other one. We found piles of hand-cut stones, and after consulting the map and a couple of other sources, surmised that they may have been pieces of the original Old Keene Mill Road. We blundered around for a bit and thought we might have found the other mill race, but as we walked, we realized it was just a man-made runoff. Along the way, we found a large rusted-out car, more beer cans, and deer tracks. When we emerged from the woods, a storm was threatening. There was no way we could venture back in, so we decided to hunt for the graveyard. It sat right in the center of a townhome complex about 1.5 miles away. It was a small fenced-in plot with 2 visible gravestones, one of which read Addison Keene. A kid played basketball nearby and watched us with a wary eye. I met both of the goals I set for myself. I did find out more about Keene's Mill, most notably that the final Keene that owned the mill was tried for murder, found guilty, sentenced to hang, escaped from prison, and eventually had his death sentence commuted. I do have to wonder if anyone who named the road, the school, the shopping centers, the residential complexes knew of this history. It's a subtle reminder that roads and other places could be named after people or events with a dark past. As for the mill races, I'm not completely sure we found one. However, having the opportunity to hike through the woods and experience something I wouldn't have otherwise was a treat, mosquito bites and all.